Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Architect's Foundation. Ryan Morrison had always been a builder, not of structures, but of systems, relationships, and opportunities. At 32, he possessed a rare combination of analytical brilliance and street-smart intuition that most MBA graduates could only dream of acquiring. His background wasn't silver-spooned. He'd clawed his way up from a middle-class family in Ohio, working construction summers to pay for business school, learning that real success came from understanding both the boardroom and the trenches. When he first met Diana Hartwell at a charity gala in Manhattan, he wasn't immediately swept away by her beauty, though she was undeniably stunning with her auburn hair and emerald eyes. What caught his attention was her intelligence and her family's business empire. Hartwell Industries had been built by her grandfather in the 1960s, manufacturing specialized industrial equipment. By the time Diana's father, Gregory, took over, it was a solid but stagnating $50 million company, comfortable but lacking vision. Diana herself was a contradiction. Sophisticated yet surprisingly naive about the business world her family dominated. She worked in the company's marketing department, more as a formality than necessity, spending her days organizing corporate events and managing social media presence. Their courtship was passionate but strategic on Ryan's part. He genuinely cared for Diana, but he also saw the potential in Hartwell Industries that Gregory couldn't see. The wedding was a grand affair, featured in the society pages, with Gregory proudly walking his only daughter down the aisle. In his speech, he welcomed Ryan not just as a son-in-law, but as fresh blood for the family business. Ryan smiled graciously, already formulating plans that would transform Hartwell Industries into something far beyond Gregory's limited imagination. Ryan's integration into the company began slowly. Gregory gave him a mid-level position in business development, expecting him to learn the ropes gradually. But Ryan had no intention of playing the patient apprentice. Within his first month, he'd identified 7 major inefficiencies in their supply chain, 3 untapped market segments, and a dozen potential strategic partnerships that could exponentially increase revenue. His first major move was brilliant in its simplicity. While Gregory focused on their traditional industrial clients, Ryan quietly began cultivating relationships with tech companies expanding their manufacturing capabilities. He understood that the future lay in automation and precision manufacturing, areas where Hartwell's equipment could excel with the right modifications and marketing approach. Diana watched her husband's integration with a mixture of admiration and unease. She'd grown up seeing her father as the ultimate authority in business matters, but Ryan operated on a different level entirely. He worked 16-hour days, not out of desperation, but from genuine excitement about the possibilities he saw everywhere. The transformation began in earnest during Ryan's second year. He convinced Gregory to let him lead a new initiative targeting renewable energy companies. The investment was substantial, nearly $8 million in retooling and research, but Ryan had done his homework. He'd spent months building relationships with key decision-makers in wind and solar industries, understanding their specific needs and pain points. Within 18 months, the renewable energy division was generating $30 million annually. Gregory was thrilled, but also somewhat bewildered by the speed of the success. He'd run the company for 20 years, achieving steady but modest growth. Ryan had revolutionized their entire market position in less than 2 years. But Ryan was just getting started. He began implementing a systematic approach to business development that Gregory couldn't fully comprehend. Every client relationship, every supplier agreement, every strategic partnership was carefully structured to create long-term dependencies that benefited Hartwell Industries. More importantly, Ryan ensured that many of these crucial relationships were built on personal trust with him specifically. As the company's revenue soared toward the $100 million mark, Ryan's position became increasingly central to operations. He created a network of influence that extended far beyond the company's traditional boundaries, building alliances with suppliers, clients, and industry leaders who viewed him as the driving force behind Hartwell's success. Diana, meanwhile, began to feel overshadowed by her husband's growing prominence. The company that had been her family's legacy was becoming Ryan's domain, and she found herself increasingly irrelevant to its operations. This growing resentment would prove to be the first crack in their marriage's foundation. Chapter 2. Empire Building. By the third year of Ryan's tenure, Hartwell Industries had become unrecognizable from the modest company Gregory had inherited. Revenue had tripled to $150 million, but more importantly, Ryan had fundamentally altered the company's position in the industrial ecosystem. He'd moved them from being a traditional equipment manufacturer to becoming an indispensable partner in their clients' operational success. Ryan's strategy was methodical and brilliant. He'd identified that their clients' biggest challenge wasn't just equipment quality. It was integration, maintenance, and optimization. So he created comprehensive service packages that made Hartwell Industries essential to their clients' daily operations. More critically, these services were structured so that Ryan personally maintained the key relationships with major accounts. The Meridian Corporation deal exemplified Ryan's approach. Meridian was a massive aerospace contractor looking to modernize their manufacturing capabilities. Instead of simply selling them equipment, Ryan proposed a complete operational partnership. Hartwell would provide customized machinery, ongoing technical support, real-time optimization consulting, and guaranteed replacement parts for 10 years. The contract was worth $40 million over 5 years, but more importantly, it made Meridian utterly dependent on Hartwell services. Ryan repeated this strategy across dozens of major accounts. Pinnacle Manufacturing, Atlas Industries, Cornerstone Systems, each became not just clients, but dependent partners whose operations would suffer significant disruption if Hartwell's services were interrupted. He carefully structured these relationships so that while the contracts were legally with Hartwell Industries, the personal relationships and operational knowledge resided with him. Gregory watched this transformation with growing ambivalence. He was thrilled by the financial success, but increasingly uncomfortable with his diminishing relevance. The company's board meetings had become forums where Ryan presented strategies that Gregory could barely follow, let alone contribute to meaningfully. Clients who once called Gregory directly now went straight to Ryan for any significant decisions. This shift in power dynamics created tension in unexpected places. Diana found herself caught between loyalty to her father and admiration for her husband's capabilities. She watched Gregory struggle to maintain authority in his own company, while Ryan effortlessly commanded respect from employees, clients, and industry partners alike. The situation became more complex when Ryan began expanding internationally. He'd identified opportunities in Southeast Asian markets that could potentially double their revenue within 3 years. But this expansion required significant capital investment and operational changes that made Gregory deeply uncomfortable. "We've always been a domestic company," Gregory argued during one heated board meeting. "This international expansion is too risky, too fast." Ryan calmly presented market analysis, financial projections, and preliminary agreements with potential partners in Malaysia and Vietnam. The numbers were compelling, but Gregory's resistance wasn't really about risk assessment. It was about control. He could sense that this expansion would solidify Ryan's position as the company's true leader while relegating Gregory to a ceremonial role. Despite Gregory's reservations, the board approved Ryan's international expansion plan. Within 18 months, Hartwell's Southeast Asian operations were generating $80 million annually. The company's total revenue had reached $280 million, making it a major player in their industry. But success came with unexpected consequences. Diana, who had initially been proud of Ryan's achievements, began feeling increasingly isolated and resentful. She'd grown up as Gregory Hartwell's daughter, inheriting status and importance from that identity. Now she was merely Ryan Morrison's wife, peripheral to the business empire that bore her family name but operated according to her husband's vision. Her resentment deepened when she realized how completely Ryan had transformed not just the company's operations, but its culture. Employees who had worked for her father for decades now looked to Ryan for leadership and direction. The office Christmas party conversations revolve around Ryan's latest strategic initiatives rather than the company's traditional values and practices. Trevor Sullivan entered this volatile situation as the new director of human resources, hired by Ryan to manage the company's rapid expansion. Trevor was charismatic, conventionally handsome, and possessed exactly the kind of smooth social skills that Diana found increasingly absent in her intensely focused husband. Where Ryan was always analyzing, planning, and building for the future, Trevor was charming, present, and attentive to immediate emotional needs. Diana's attraction to Trevor began innocently enough. Casual conversations about company events, shared frustrations about being somewhat peripheral to the company's core operations, and gradually more personal discussions about feeling undervalued and overlooked. Trevor, recognizing both opportunity and genuine connection, carefully cultivated this relationship while maintaining perfect professional behavior in Ryan's presence. Ryan, completely absorbed in orchestrating the company's continued expansion, failed to notice the subtle shift in dynamics between his wife and the charming HR director. He was too busy building an empire to see that the foundation of his personal life was beginning to crack. As Hartwell Industries approached the $300 million revenue milestone, Ryan had created something remarkable, a business empire that seemed unstoppable. But he'd also created the conditions for a betrayal that would test every ounce of his strategic brilliance and ruthless determination. Chapter 3: Fractures and Deceptions. The warning signs were subtle at first, visible only to someone who knew Diana intimately. Ryan noticed her increased attention to appearance on seemingly ordinary workdays, her new habit of staying late for marketing consultations with Trevor, and her growing criticism of Ryan's work-life balance. But Ryan Morrison was a man who dealt in facts and concrete evidence, not suspicions and intuition. Diana's affair with Trevor Sullivan began 18 months before the confrontation that would change everything. What started as emotional comfort evolved into clandestine meetings, fabricated business trips, and an elaborate web of deception that both participants believed was invisible to the brilliant but preoccupied Ryan. They underestimated him completely. Ryan had built his success on understanding systems, relationships, and human behavior. He'd created a business empire by recognizing patterns others missed and anticipating consequences others couldn't foresee. These same skills made him acutely aware of changes in his personal environment, even when his conscious mind was focused elsewhere. He first noticed Trevor's behavioral shifts during board meetings. The man who had been professionally respectful became subtly challenging, asking questions that seemed designed to undermine Ryan's authority rather than understand his strategies. Trevor began making suggestions about company direction that were clearly beyond his HR expertise, positioning himself as someone with broader business insight. More tellingly, Diana's complaints about Ryan's work schedule increased precisely as the company hit new success milestones. When Hartwell Industries secured the massive Richardson Group contract, worth $60 million over 3 years, Diana's response wasn't celebration, but criticism about Ryan missing her cousin's wedding for negotiations. Ryan began documenting these patterns with the same methodical approach he used for business intelligence. He installed security cameras in his home office, reviewed company access logs, and quietly hired a private investigator, not to confirm his suspicions, but to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. The evidence was damning and comprehensive. Trevor and Diana had been meeting regularly at the downtown Marriott, using company credit cards Trevor had access to for their expenses. They'd taken weekend trips to Chicago and Boston, supposedly for professional development seminars that Ryan's investigation revealed were fictional. But Ryan discovered something far more troubling than simple adultery. Trevor and Diana's conversations, captured by the investigator's surveillance, revealed plans that went beyond their affair. They discussed Ryan's inevitable downfall, speculated about Gregory eventually choosing Trevor as a successor, and fantasized about controlling Hartwell Industries together. Trevor had been systematically undermining Ryan's position with Gregory, planting seeds of doubt about the sustainability of Ryan's aggressive expansion strategies. He suggested that Ryan was becoming reckless, that the international operations were overextended, and that the company needed more traditional leadership to maintain stability. Gregory, already insecure about his diminished role, was receptive to these concerns. Trevor carefully positioned himself as the voice of prudent business judgment, someone who could help Gregory regain control of his own company. Their private conversations, which Trevor reported to Diana, revealed Gregory's growing determination to remove Ryan from power. Ryan absorbed this information with the cold calculation that had made him successful. He felt no emotional devastation, no romantic heartbreak, only a crystalline clarity about what needed to be done. Diana and Trevor had declared war on him without realizing their enemy was far more formidable than they'd imagined. Rather than confronting them immediately, Ryan began implementing countermeasures. He restructured key client relationships to create even stronger personal dependencies, moved critical operational knowledge to secure systems only he could access, and began quietly liquidating some of his more vulnerable investments to create liquid assets for the coming battle. Most importantly, Ryan started documenting everything. Every email, every contract, every client relationship, every strategic decision. He created comprehensive records that established his indispensable role in Hartwell Industries' success. He also began reaching out to headhunters and potential investors, not because he planned to leave, but because he wanted to understand his options and market value. The irony wasn't lost on him. While Trevor and Diana plotted to destroy his position, Ryan was actually strengthening it. Their deception had awakened a ruthless pragmatism that made him even more formidable than before. He'd built Hartwell Industries into a $400 million empire, but he'd done it while playing by Gregory's rules and maintaining family harmony. Now that those constraints were removed, Ryan began operating with complete strategic freedom. He started by creating additional dependencies within the company's operations. Key suppliers were locked into exclusive agreements that required his personal approval for modifications. Major clients signed extended service contracts that specifically named Ryan as the primary relationship manager. Critical operational systems were redesigned to require authorization codes that only Ryan possessed. When Gregory finally made his move, demanding Ryan's departure and threatening divorce, Ryan was ready. His calm response, "No problem, Dad. You'll be fine," wasn't bravado or denial. It was the confidence of someone who had spent months preparing for exactly this confrontation. The changes in paperwork Ryan made weren't desperate last-minute maneuvers. They were the activation of carefully laid contingency plans that would demonstrate to Gregory, Trevor, and Diana exactly who controlled Hartwell Industries' future. The 41 panic phone calls from Gregory the next day were just the beginning of their education in the true cost of betraying Ryan Morrison. Chapter 4. The Betrayal Unveiled. The confrontation came on a cold Thursday morning in November, exactly 3 years and 7 months after Ryan had joined Hartwell Industries. The company had just announced record quarterly profits of $142 million, making it one of the fastest-growing industrial manufacturers in the sector. Ryan arrived at the office expecting to discuss the Asian expansion timeline with Gregory, but instead found his father-in-law waiting with Trevor Sullivan and the company's longtime attorney, Bernard Walsh. "Ryan, sit down," Gregory commanded, his voice carrying an authority he hadn't exercised in months. "We need to talk." The office felt different, colder, more formal. Trevor sat slightly behind Gregory's desk, positioned as an advisor rather than subordinate. Walsh avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable with whatever script he'd been given. Ryan recognized the staging immediately. This was a corporate execution, carefully orchestrated and deliberately humiliating. "I've been thinking about the company's future," Gregory began, his words clearly rehearsed. "We've grown too fast, taken on too much risk. The international expansion, these complex client relationships, all these dependencies you've created, it's not sustainable." Ryan listened without interruption, his expression neutral. He'd anticipated this conversation for weeks, had rehearsed his responses, and prepared for every possible variation of Gregory's attack. What surprised him wasn't the betrayal itself, but the amateurish way it was being executed. "I'm restructuring the leadership team," Gregory continued. "Trevor will be taking over business development and client relations. You've done good work here, but it's time for you to move on. Your aggressive style just doesn't fit our company culture anymore." The insult was deliberate, suggesting that Ryan was the problem, that his success had somehow been detrimental to the company he'd transformed. Trevor leaned forward slightly, unable to suppress a small smile of anticipated victory. "There's one more thing," Gregory added, his voice dropping to a more personal tone. "Diana wants a divorce. She's been unhappy for a long time. Feels like you've changed, become too obsessed with work. She deserves better than being married to someone who cares more about deals than family." This was the moment Ryan had been preparing for, the complete betrayal wrapped in righteous justification. Gregory wasn't just firing him. He was rewriting history to make Ryan the villain in his own success story. Ryan stood slowly, his movement deliberate and controlled. He looked at each man in turn. Gregory, trying to project authority he didn't actually possess. Trevor, barely containing his triumph. Walsh, clearly uncomfortable with his role in this corporate coup. "Understand," Ryan said simply. "You're right about one thing, Dad. I have changed. When I first joined this company, I thought family loyalty meant something. I thought building success together created bonds that couldn't be broken by jealousy or insecurity." He moved toward the window, looking out at the expanded parking lot filled with luxury cars belonging to employees whose positions existed only because of the growth he'd orchestrated. "But you're also wrong about something important," Ryan continued, turning back to face them. "You think you're firing me from your company. You think you're taking back control of Hartwell Industries. You think Trevor here is going to step into my role and maintain the relationships I've built." Gregory's expression shifted slightly, sensing something in Ryan's tone that didn't match the submissive departure he'd expected. "The truth is, gentlemen, you're not just firing an employee. You're dismantling the foundation of everything this company has become. But don't worry about that now. You'll understand soon enough." Ryan smiled. Not the warm family smile Gregory remembered, but something colder, more calculating. "No problem, Dad. You'll be fine." He shook hands with Walsh, nodded politely to Trevor, and gave Gregory a brief embrace that felt more like a threat than affection. Then he walked out of the office that had been his second home for nearly 4 years, leaving behind an empire he'd built and a family that had chosen to destroy him. But Ryan Morrison wasn't finished with Hartwell Industries. In fact, his real work was just beginning. 20 minutes after leaving the office, Ryan made the first call to his attorney, Marcus Pemberton, a corporate law specialist he'd been working with for months in preparation for this exact scenario. The conversation was brief and focused. Execute phase 1 immediately. Within 2 hours, 17 major clients received priority communications from Ryan's personal business consultancy, a company he'd registered 6 months earlier as Morrison Strategic Solutions. The messages were professional, respectful, and absolutely devastating to Hartwell Industries' immediate future. The Richardson Group received notice that their primary technical liaison, Ryan Morrison, was no longer with Hartwell Industries, and that their ongoing $60 million project might experience delays or complications as a result. Would they be interested in discussing alternative arrangements for project completion? Meridian Corporation learned that the custom optimization protocols they depended on for daily operations had been developed personally by Ryan Morrison, who was no longer available to provide ongoing support through Hartwell Industries. Morrison Strategic Solutions, however, would be happy to discuss direct consulting arrangements. Atlas Industries discovered that their critical equipment maintenance schedules and proprietary calibration procedures were managed through systems that required Ryan Morrison's personal authorization that was no longer available through Hartwell Industries. By 6 p.m. that evening, Gregory's phone had started ringing. By 8 p.m., he'd received 16 calls from panicked clients demanding explanations and immediate solutions. By 10 p.m., Trevor Sullivan was beginning to understand that managing business development involved more than attending meetings and reviewing reports. At midnight, Gregory Hartwell made the first of what would become 41 consecutive phone calls to Ryan Morrison. The calls went unanswered, but each voicemail grew more desperate, more pleading, more willing to negotiate. Ryan listened to the first few messages with satisfaction, then turned off his phone. Tomorrow, the real education would begin. Chapter 5. The Network Activation. Friday morning brought chaos to Hartwell Industries that no amount of corporate crisis management could contain. Ryan's strategic withdrawal wasn't just the departure of an executive. It was the systematic removal of the nervous system that kept the company functioning at its expanded capacity. The Asian operations were the first to feel the impact. The Malaysian facility, which generated $40 million annually, discovered that their quarterly parts orders couldn't be processed because the authorization codes had been changed. The Vietnamese manufacturing partnership needed immediate approval for a $3 million equipment modification, but the approval system required Ryan's digital signature. Trevor Sullivan arrived at the office at 7 a.m., determined to demonstrate his readiness to fill Ryan's role. By 9 a.m., he was drowning in problems he didn't understand and couldn't solve. The corporate phone system was overwhelmed with calls from clients, suppliers, and international partners, all demanding immediate attention for issues that seemed impossibly complex. Where are the client relationship files? Trevor demanded from Ryan's former assistant, Patricia Kim. Mr. Morrison kept the detailed relationship notes and contact protocols on his personal secure server. Patricia replied professionally. The company files have basic contract information, but the operational details and personal relationship history aren't accessible. Trevor stared at her in disbelief. What do you mean, not accessible? This is company information. Actually, sir, the relationship management system was Mr. Morrison's personal intellectual property. He licensed its use to Hartwell Industries, but the core data belongs to Morrison Strategic Solutions. This revelation sent Trevor rushing to Gregory's office, where he found his supposed ally fielding angry calls from their 3 largest clients. Gregory looked haggard, his usual composed demeanor completely shattered by the cascade of problems that seemed to multiply every hour. The Pinnacle account wants to terminate their contract, Gregory reported grimly. They say their operations depend on technical protocols that only Ryan understands. Cornerstone is threatening legal action if we can't maintain their optimization schedules. And Richardson Group is demanding immediate clarification about project continuity. Trevor felt panic rising in his chest. Can't we just hire back Ryan? Offer him more money, better terms? Gregory's laugh was bitter. I've called him 41 times since yesterday. He's not answering. His attorney sent a formal letter this morning stating that Morrison Strategic Solutions is prepared to honor existing client relationships, but only through direct consulting agreements that bypass Hartwell Industries entirely. The full scope of Ryan's preparation became clearer as the day progressed. The company's supplier relationships, which Ryan had carefully cultivated over 4 years, were structured with personal guarantee clauses that made Ryan individually responsible for contract fulfillment. Without his authorization, suppliers couldn't modify orders, adjust delivery schedules, or approve custom specifications. More devastatingly, Ryan had structured the international expansion financing through personal guarantees and relationships that made him indispensable to the debt arrangements. The Asian operations have been financed through a complex web of international partnerships where Ryan served as the primary relationship manager and operational guarantor. By noon, Hartwell Industries' stock price had dropped 12% as news of the management transition spread through industry networks. By 3 p.m., 3 major suppliers had suspended deliveries pending clarification of account management responsibilities. Diana, who had spent the morning celebrating her anticipated freedom with Trevor, began receiving panicked calls from her father by mid-afternoon. The reality of their situation was becoming undeniable. They hadn't just fired Ryan, they had systematically destroyed the infrastructure that made Hartwell Industries successful. Can he really do this? Diana asked Trevor during a private moment in his office. Can he just take all the clients and relationships? Trevor, who had spent the day discovering exactly how little he understood about Ryan's role, could only offer weak reassurances. It's probably just temporary disruption. We'll rebuild the relationships, bring in new talent. But even as he spoke, Trevor knew the situation was far worse than simple relationship management. Ryan hadn't just built client relationships. He had created operational dependencies that made Hartwell Industries essential to their clients' daily functions. More importantly, he had structured those dependencies so that his personal involvement was irreplaceable. The afternoon brought news that made their situation even more precarious. 3 of Hartwell's key engineering staff had submitted resignations, accepting positions with Morrison Strategic Solutions. 2 critical account managers followed suit, taking their institutional knowledge and client relationships with them. Patricia Kim delivered the final blow when she handed Gregory a formal notice that the proprietary software systems Ryan had developed for client relationship management, operational optimization, and international logistic coordination were licensed to Hartwell Industries on a month-to-month basis. Morrison Strategic Solutions was terminating those licenses effective immediately. What does this mean practically? Gregory demanded. It means, sir, that we lose access to the systems that manage $280 million worth of client relationships, track $40 million in international operations, and coordinate the supply chain for our core manufacturing processes. We'll need to rebuild these systems from scratch or find alternative solutions. Gregory stared at the notice in his hands, finally understanding the magnitude of what he'd done. He hadn't just fired his son-in-law. He had declared war on the person who had become Hartwell Industries' central nervous system. As the market closed on Friday, Hartwell Industries' stock had fallen 18%. Industry publications were reporting management chaos and operational disruptions at what had been one of the sector's most successful companies. Ryan Morrison, meanwhile, was working from his home office, fielding calls from clients eager to maintain their business relationships through his new consulting firm. The transition was proceeding exactly as he had planned: surgical, comprehensive, and utterly devastating to those who had betrayed him. Gregory's 41st phone call came at 11:47 p.m. This time, Ryan answered. "Hello, Dad," Ryan said calmly. "I understand you've been trying to reach me." Chapter 6. The Reckoning Begins. "Ryan, thank God." Gregory's voice was strained, desperate. "We need to talk. This whole situation has gotten out of hand." Ryan leaned back in his leather chair, looking out at the city lights from his home office. He'd been expecting this call for exactly 36 hours and 17 minutes. Long enough for Gregory to understand the scope of his miscalculation, but not long enough for him to find alternative solutions. "Has it gotten out of hand, Dad?" "From my perspective, everything is proceeding exactly as expected. Hartwell Industries made a management decision, and the market is responding accordingly. Don't play games with me, son. You know what you're doing to the company. You're destroying everything we built together." The irony in Gregory's words was perfect. Everything we built together? That's interesting. Yesterday you told me I didn't belong at Hartwell Industries. You said my aggressive style didn't fit the company culture. Now you're claiming joint ownership of the success. Gregory's silence stretched for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice carried a pleading tone Ryan had never heard before. "Look, maybe I made a mistake. The stress of rapid growth, the pressure from the board, I wasn't thinking clearly. We can fix this. Come back. We'll restructure your position, give you more authority." "More authority?" Ryan's laugh was cold. "Dad, I created $450 million in value for Hartwell Industries. I built relationships that generate nearly 80% of your revenue. I designed operational systems that keep your entire Asian expansion functioning. Exactly what additional authority were you planning to offer me?" Trevor's voice came through in the background, clearly on speakerphone. "Ryan, we can work this out. This doesn't have to be adversarial." "Trevor." Ryan's tone brightened with false warmth. "How was your first day as Director of Business Development? Did you enjoy managing the Richardson Group crisis? How about explaining to Meridian Corporation why their optimization protocols suddenly stopped working?" The silence from Trevor's end was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," Ryan continued, his voice becoming businesslike. "Morrison Strategic Solutions has received formal requests from 14 major clients to take over their accounts directly. We're prepared to honor their existing service requirements through new consulting agreements. Hartwell Industries is welcome to compete for those contracts, of course. You can't just steal our clients. Gregory exploded. Steal? Dad, these companies are asking me to continue providing services you apparently can't deliver. I spent 4 years building personal relationships based on trust and competence. Those relationships belong to me, not to Hartwell Industries. Ryan let that sink in before continuing. Besides, you fired me. You said my services weren't needed. Now you're upset that I'm offering those same services to clients who still want them. What do you want? Gregory asked, defeat creeping into his voice. Money? Ownership percentage? Just tell me what it will take to fix this. This was the moment Ryan had been orchestrating since the day he discovered Diana's affair. Everything had led to this conversation, this admission of complete dependency. I want you to understand something, Dad. For 4 years, I respected you. I treated you like family. I built your company into an empire while maintaining the fiction that you were still in charge. I did that out of love for Diana and respect for the Hartwell legacy. Ryan's voice hardened. But you chose to betray that respect. You chose to conspire with my wife's lover to destroy me. You chose to rewrite history and make me the villain in my own success story. Ryan, about Diana. Don't. The word cut through Gregory's attempt at explanation like a blade. I know about Trevor. I know about the affair. I know about your private conversations where you plan my removal. I know about Diana's fantasies of controlling the company with her new boyfriend. The silence on the other end was complete. So here's what's actually going to happen, Ryan continued. Morrison Strategic Solutions will take over the accounts that want to work with us directly. Our preliminary contracts suggest we'll be managing about $320 million in annual business by the end of next month. You're going to destroy us, Gregory whispered. No, Dad. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just building a new company with clients who value competence over family drama. Ryan ended the call and immediately dialed Marcus Pemberton, his attorney. How did the acquisition proposal go? Ryan asked. Better than expected. The Richardson Group is very interested in a direct partnership structure. Meridian Corporation wants to discuss exclusive consulting arrangements. And we've had 3 inquiries from companies about acquiring Hartwell Industries client contracts directly through us. Perfect. And the regulatory filings? All submitted. Morrison Strategic Solutions is now officially registered as a comprehensive industrial consulting firm. We have the legal framework to operate in all the same markets as Hartwell Industries. Monday morning would bring phase 2 of Ryan's plan, the systematic acquisition of everything valuable that Hartwell Industries had built, purchased at a fraction of its worth from a company that could no longer function without his involvement. But first, he had one more call to make. Diana had left 17 voicemails over the weekend, her tone progressing from angry to confused to desperate. It was time to complete her education in the cost of betrayal. Hello, Diana. He answered on the first ring. Ryan, we need to talk. This has gone too far. You're hurting innocent people. Innocent people? That's fascinating. Tell me, which innocent people are you worried about? Your father, who conspired to destroy my career. Trevor, who helped him plan my removal while sleeping with my wife. Or you, who's been lying to my face for 18 months. Diana's sob was audible through the phone. I made mistakes, but this isn't just about us anymore. You're destroying the company, people's jobs, the family legacy. The family legacy, Ryan repeated slowly. You mean the legacy I created by growing a $50 million company into a $450 million empire? That legacy, that's not fair. The company existed before you. Yes, it did. It was a small, stagnating business that your father was running into irrelevance. I transformed it into something remarkable, and now I'm going to transform it again. What do you mean? Ryan smiled, though she couldn't see it. I mean, Diana, that by the time I'm finished, there won't be a Hartwell Industries left to argue about. But don't worry, Morrison Strategic Solutions will be hiring. Trevor can apply for a position in our HR department. The pay won't be quite what he's used to, but we believe in giving people opportunities to prove themselves. The call ended in Diana's tears, but Ryan felt no satisfaction from her pain. This wasn't about emotional revenge. It was about justice, consequences, and building something new from the ashes of trust destroyed. Phase 2 would begin Monday morning, and by the end of the month, everyone involved would understand exactly what they had lost when they chose to betray Ryan Morrison. Chapter 7: Empire Rebuilt. Monday morning marked the beginning of what financial journals would later call the most surgical corporate dismantling in modern business history. Ryan Morrison didn't waste time with emotional satisfaction or petty revenge. He implemented a systematic acquisition strategy that was both legally unassailable and devastating in its effectiveness. Morrison Strategic Solutions opened its doors in a downtown Manhattan office building just 12 blocks from Hartwell Industries. The symbolism was deliberate, close enough for Gregory to see the gleaming corporate logo from his office window, but far enough to establish complete independence. Ryan's first move was to formalize the client relationships that had already begun transitioning. The Richardson Group signed an exclusive 5-year consulting agreement worth $75 million annually. Meridian Corporation restructured their operations around Morrison Strategic Solutions' comprehensive support services. Atlas Industries, Pinnacle Manufacturing, and Cornerstone Systems followed within the first week. But Ryan's strategy went beyond simply stealing Hartwell's clients. He was systematically dismantling the infrastructure that made Hartwell Industries viable while building a superior alternative that rendered the original company obsolete. The Asian operations were his masterstroke. The Malaysian and Vietnamese facilities that generated $80 million annually for Hartwell Industries were structured through partnerships that required Ryan's personal guarantees and operational oversight. Without his involvement, the facilities couldn't fulfill their production contracts or maintain their supply chain relationships. Ryan offered the Asian partners a choice: continue struggling with an increasingly dysfunctional Hartwell Industries, or transition to direct partnerships with Morrison Strategic Solutions. The decision was easy. Morrison could provide better service, more reliable support, and clearer communication than the chaos-ridden Hartwell organization. Within 3 weeks, Morrison Strategic Solutions had acquired effective control of $240 million in annual business that had previously flowed through Hartwell Industries. But Ryan wasn't finished. He was just getting started. "Sir, we have a problem," Patricia Kim reported during Ryan's morning briefing. Patricia had been the first Hartwell Industries employee to join Morrison Strategic Solutions, bringing with her institutional knowledge and client relationships that were invaluable during the transition. "What kind of problem?" Ryan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Hartwell Industries is attempting to sue us for corporate theft, breach of fiduciary duty, and tortious interference with business relationships. Gregory filed the papers this morning." Ryan smiled. He'd been expecting this desperate legal maneuver for weeks. "Did you prepare the response package we discussed?" "Yes, sir. Documentation of all personal relationship development, proof that the intellectual property belongs to you individually, and evidence that all client transitions were initiated by client requests rather than our solicitation." "Perfect. Send it to Marcus Pemberton and tell him to file our countersuit for wrongful termination, breach of employment contract, and defamation. Also include the discrimination complaint. Gregory's firing me immediately after discovering my wife's affair creates an interesting legal liability." The legal battle would be expensive and protracted, but Ryan had advantages that Gregory couldn't match. Every client relationship, every operational system, every strategic partnership had been carefully documented and legally structured to protect Ryan's interests. More importantly, Ryan could afford a lengthy legal battle. Hartwell Industries, hemorrhaging money and clients daily, could not. The real psychological blow came through Trevor Sullivan's systematic destruction. Ryan didn't need to attack Trevor directly. He simply created conditions where Trevor's incompetence became undeniable. When Trevor attempted to rebuild client relationships, he discovered that the decision-makers he tried to contact were people Ryan had personally recruited and promoted. These individuals owed their careers to Ryan's mentorship and had no loyalty to Hartwell Industries as an institution. When Trevor tried to manage the Asian operations, he found himself dealing with partners who spoke limited English and had developed working relationships exclusively with Ryan. Critical production decisions required cultural understanding and technical knowledge that Trevor simply didn't possess. When Trevor attempted to replace Ryan's proprietary operational systems, he discovered that rebuilding them would cost approximately $15 million and take 18 months, time and money that Hartwell Industries couldn't afford. Diana watched her lover's confidence crumble under the pressure of responsibilities he'd never understood. The man who had seemed so sophisticated and capable in hotel rooms and private conversations revealed himself to be fundamentally out of his depth when faced with real business challenges. "Maybe we should just try to make peace with Ryan," Diana suggested during one of their increasingly strained conversations. Trevor's response was bitter. "He's not interested in peace. He's interested in destroying us." Trevor was wrong. Ryan wasn't interested in destroying them. He was interested in building something better from the resources they could no longer effectively manage. Their destruction was simply a natural consequence of their incompetence. By the end of the first month, Morrison Strategic Solutions had grown to 47 employees and was generating $28 million in monthly revenue. Hartwell Industries, meanwhile, had lost 60% of its client base and was facing severe cash flow problems. Gregory made increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate, offering Ryan partnerships, buyback agreements, and even majority ownership of Hartwell Industries. Each offer was politely declined. Ryan had no interest in salvaging Gregory's company. He was building something far superior. The final phase of Ryan's strategy involved acquiring Hartwell Industries' physical assets at liquidation prices. As the company's financial situation deteriorated, creditors began demanding payment, and suppliers suspended services. Gregory was forced to sell equipment, facilities, and intellectual property to meet immediate obligations. Morrison Strategic Solutions submitted competitive bids for every major asset sale, acquiring critical manufacturing equipment at 30 cents on the dollar. The Malaysian facility partnership was transferred directly to Morrison for the assumption of existing debt. The Vietnamese operations were restructured as a Morrison subsidiary. Within 6 months, Ryan had built a company that not only replaced Hartwell Industries, but significantly exceeded its capabilities. Morrison Strategic Solutions generated $380 million in annual revenue, employed 180 people, and maintained operational facilities across 3 continents. Hartwell Industries, reduced to a skeleton operation managing $60 million in legacy contracts, was effectively a shell of its former self. Gregory had managed to save the company's legal existence, but its substance, everything valuable that had made it successful, now belonged to Ryan Morrison. The transformation was complete, but Ryan's personal reckoning with those who had betrayed him was just beginning. Chapter 8: Personal Consequences. The destruction of Hartwell Industries was only the opening movement in Ryan's symphony of retribution. The systematic dismantling of the company had been methodical and impersonal, a business response to a business betrayal. But Diana and Trevor's personal betrayal required a more intimate form of justice. Diana discovered the true scope of her situation when she attempted to file for divorce 6 months after Ryan's departure from Hartwell Industries. Her attorney, Robert Chun, delivered news that shattered her remaining illusions about financial security and social status. "Mrs. Morrison, we have significant problems with your divorce filing," Chun reported during their consultation. "Your husband's assets are far more complex and protected than we initially understood." Diana shifted uncomfortably in the expensive leather chair. "What do you mean? I know about his company, but we've been married for 5 years. I'm entitled to half of everything under state law." "That's correct, but the challenge is determining what actually constitutes marital property. Your husband has been extraordinarily careful about asset protection and legal structure." Chun spread documents across the conference table, revealing the intricate web of legal protections Ryan had built around his wealth. Morrison Strategic Solutions was structured as a series of interlocking entities, consulting firms, holding companies, and international partnerships that made asset valuation nearly impossible. More problematically, Chun continued, "Your husband has evidence of adultery, which affects spousal support calculations. He's also claiming that your affair was conducted using marital assets and company resources, which creates potential reimbursement obligations. Diana felt panic rising in her chest. What does that mean practically? It means instead of receiving a substantial settlement, you might owe your husband money. The hotel bills, travel expenses, and personal charges associated with your affair were paid using credit cards and accounts that legally belong to both of you. Your husband is claiming financial damage from your misuse of marital assets. The legal strategy was brilliant in its cruelty. Ryan wasn't just denying Diana access to his wealth. He was making her affair financially catastrophic for her personally. Every romantic dinner, every weekend getaway, every gift she'd exchanged with Trevor became evidence of financial misconduct. Trevor faced his own reckoning as Hartwell Industries' collapse accelerated. His position as director of business development became meaningless when there was no business left to develop. Gregory, desperate to cut costs, eliminated Trevor's position 8 months after Ryan's departure. "I'm sorry, Trevor," Gregory said during the termination meeting. "We simply can't afford your salary anymore. The consulting agreements you were supposed to rebuild never materialized. The client relationships haven't recovered. We need to reduce overhead just to survive." Trevor stared at the severance package: 2 weeks' pay and immediate termination of benefits. Less than a year earlier, he'd been planning to take over Ryan's role and marry the boss's daughter. Now he was unemployed, associated with a failed company, and romantically involved with a woman whose divorce was becoming a financial disaster. His attempts to find new employment revealed how completely Ryan had contaminated his professional reputation. Industry contacts who might have been interested in Trevor's skills were aware of his role in Hartwell Industries' collapse. More damagingly, they knew he'd been hired by Ryan Morrison and then participated in Ryan's removal, a betrayal that made Trevor unemployable in their close-knit professional community. "I'm sorry, Trevor," explained Jennifer Walsh, a headhunter who had previously placed him at Hartwell Industries. "Your resume is strong, but your involvement in the Morrison situation makes you a liability. No executive wants to hire someone who's known for undermining their supervisor." The social consequences were equally devastating. Diana and Trevor found themselves increasingly isolated from the professional and social circles they'd taken for granted. Country club memberships, charity board positions, and invitation lists that had defined their social status all evaporated as their association with the Hartwell Industries disaster became public knowledge. Diana's father, watching his life's work reduced to ruins, blamed her increasingly openly for the catastrophe. "If you hadn't destroyed your marriage," Gregory raged during one particularly bitter argument, "Ryan would still be family. He would never have done this to us." The accusation was both unfair and accurate. Diana's affair had provided the catalyst for Ryan's transformation from family member to enemy, but Gregory's own jealousy and insecurity had made the confrontation inevitable. Trevor and Diana's relationship, built on excitement and mutual attraction, couldn't survive the stress of unemployment, financial hardship, and social exile. Their romantic fantasy collapsed under the weight of real-world consequences, replaced by mutual blame and resentment. "This is all your fault," Trevor accused during one of their final arguments. "You said your husband wouldn't find out. You said your father would support us. You said we'd be running the company together." Diana's response was equally bitter. "You said you could replace Ryan. You said you understood the business. You said the clients would work with you instead of him." Both accusations were accurate. They had both been delusional about their abilities and naive about Ryan's capabilities. Their affair had been built on shared resentment and mutual overconfidence, foundations that crumbled when tested by reality. Meanwhile, Ryan continued building Morrison Strategic Solutions into a global consulting empire. The company's success was featured in business magazines, case studies, and industry conferences. Ryan himself became a sought-after speaker and consultant, his reputation enhanced rather than damaged by the Hartwell Industries situation. The contrast was intentional and devastating. While Diana struggled with legal bills and social isolation, Ryan acquired a penthouse apartment and vacation home in the Hamptons. While Trevor remained unemployed and increasingly desperate, Ryan hired top talent from across the industry, offering compensation packages that reflected Morrison Strategic Solutions' exceptional profitability. The message was clear. Choosing to betray Ryan Morrison had consequences that extended far beyond professional disappointment. It meant exclusion from the world of success, influence, and prosperity that Ryan now controlled. But Ryan's retribution was far from complete. The public humiliation and financial consequences were only the beginning of what he had planned for those who had destroyed his trust and betrayed his loyalty. Chapter 9. Final Justice. 2 years after the confrontation that destroyed Hartwell Industries, Ryan Morrison stood in his corner office overlooking Manhattan, reviewing acquisition proposals from 3 international manufacturing conglomerates interested in purchasing Morrison Strategic Solutions. The company he'd built from his home office had grown into an $800 million enterprise with operations across 4 continents and partnerships with Fortune 500 companies worldwide. The irony wasn't lost on him. The betrayal that was meant to destroy his career had instead liberated him to build something far greater than he'd ever imagined possible within the constraints of family loyalty and corporate politics. His assistant knocked and entered. "Mr. Morrison, you have a visitor. Gregory Hartwell is here. He says it's urgent." Ryan hadn't seen his former father-in-law in 8 months, though he'd been monitoring Hartwell Industries' continued decline through industry publications and financial reports. The company was now operating at a loss, managing fewer than 12 active accounts, and facing bankruptcy within 6 months. Send him in, Ryan decided. This conversation had been inevitable since the day he'd walked out of Gregory's office. Gregory entered looking 20 years older than his actual age. The stress of watching his life's work collapse had taken a visible toll. Gray hair, deep lines around his eyes, and a defeated posture that spoke of complete exhaustion. "Ryan," Gregory began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for seeing me." "Sit down, Gregory." The use of his first name instead of Dad was deliberate, establishing the formal distance that now existed between them. "I came to ask for your help," Gregory continued, settling into the chair across from Ryan's desk. "The company is finished. We'll be filing for bankruptcy next month unless something changes." Ryan remained silent, allowing Gregory to continue. "I know what I did was wrong. I let jealousy and insecurity cloud my judgment. I believed Trevor's lies about your being a threat to the company's stability. I participated in destroying the best thing that ever happened to Hartwell Industries." "You did more than participate, Gregory. You orchestrated it. You planned my removal, you chose my replacement, and you delivered the message personally." Gregory nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "I know. I take full responsibility. But I'm not here just for myself. There are still 43 employees at Hartwell Industries. They're going to lose their jobs because of my mistakes." This was the moment Ryan had been anticipating, the complete acknowledgement of responsibility and the appeal to his sense of mercy. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" Ryan asked. "Buy the company. Purchase our remaining assets, take over our contracts, and save the jobs. I'll transfer my ownership stake for whatever you think is fair. I just want to minimize the damage to innocent people." Ryan leaned back in his chair, considering the proposal. "And what about Diana? What about Trevor? Are they part of this rehabilitation fantasy?" Gregory's expression hardened slightly. Diana is no longer my concern. The divorce was finalized last month. She's received nothing beyond what the courts ordered for immediate support, which amounts to very little given the circumstances. And Trevor hasn't worked in the industry since I let him go. Last I heard, he was managing a retail store in Ohio. His reputation is finished. Ryan stood and walked to his window, looking down at the busy street below. After a long moment, he turned back to Gregory. "I'll make you an offer, Gregory, but comes with conditions you might find unacceptable." "Name them." "First, Morrison Strategic Solutions will acquire Hartwell Industries' remaining assets for the amount of outstanding debt, approximately $12 million. This covers your creditors, but leaves you with nothing." Gregory nodded. "Acceptable." "Second, I'll retain the 43 employees and honor their existing benefit packages. They're not responsible for your mistakes." Thank you. Third, you'll sign a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement about all business operations, client relationships, and strategic information you learned during my employment. You'll also provide a written confession acknowledging your role in the conspiracy to remove me from the company. Gregory hesitated. A confession? Full documentation of your discussions with Trevor, your knowledge of Diana's affair, and your decision to terminate my employment based on personal rather than professional considerations. I want a complete record of what happened and why. That's professionally humiliating. Gregory, you're about to lose everything you spent 40 years building. Professional humiliation is the least significant consequence you're facing. After several minutes of consideration, Gregory nodded. Acceptable. Fourth and finally, Ryan continued, you'll have no ongoing role in the company or its operations. You'll receive no consulting fees, no advisory positions, no involvement of any kind. Hartwell Industries will become a Morrison Strategic Solutions subsidiary, and you'll be permanently excluded from its management. The final condition was the most bitter. Gregory would be forced to watch someone else control the company that bore his family name, manage relationships he'd spent decades building, and direct operations he'd created from nothing. Understand, Gregory said quietly. When can we finalize the agreement? The paperwork will be ready tomorrow. You can sign it, collect your personal belongings, and close this chapter of your life. Gregory stood to leave, then turned back. Ryan, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. You deserve better from all of us. You're right, Gregory. I did deserve better. But your betrayal taught me something valuable. Family loyalty is only worth maintaining when it's mutual. When it becomes one-sided, it becomes weakness. After Gregory left, Ryan called his attorney to begin the acquisition process. Within 2 weeks, Morrison Strategic Solutions had absorbed Hartwell Industries' remaining operations, integrated its employees, and eliminated the last vestige of the company that had once defined the Hartwell family legacy. Diana attempted contact several times over the following months, sending letters and messages asking for reconciliation or at least civil communication. Ryan never responded. She had made her choice when she decided that Trevor Sullivan was more appealing than her marriage, and Ryan never gave second chances to people who betrayed his trust. Trevor's fate was perhaps the most fitting. His association with the Hartwell Industries disaster made him permanently unemployable in their industry. He eventually moved back to his hometown in Ohio, managing a small electronics store and living with the knowledge that his affair with Diana had cost him any chance of professional success. 5 years after the confrontation that destroyed Hartwell Industries, Ryan Morrison was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as the executive who built an empire from betrayal. The article detailed how his removal from a family company had catalyzed the creation of one of the most successful consulting firms in American business history. Ryan kept the magazine cover framed on his office wall, not as a trophy of revenge, but as a reminder that the best response to betrayal wasn't emotional retaliation, but systematic success that made the betrayers irrelevant. He never married again, never trusted completely again, and never forgot the lesson that power built on family relationships was fragile, but power built on competence, preparation, and strategic thinking was unassailable. Morrison Strategic Solutions continued growing, eventually acquiring companies across 3 industries and establishing Ryan as one of the most influential executives of his generation. He built something far greater than Hartwell Industries could ever have become, proving that sometimes the greatest gift your enemies can give you is forcing you to discover your true potential. The betrayal that was meant to destroy Ryan Morrison had instead created one of the most successful businessmen of his era. In the end, that was the most perfect
Another story
revenge
comes
of
to
all.
an end.
What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Watcher. Weston Page had built his life with the same precision he applied to his architectural designs. Every element carefully placed, every potential weakness reinforced. At 37, he'd achieved what most men only dreamed of, a successful firm specializing in sustainable residential design, a beautiful home in Portland's West Hills that he'd designed himself, and a family he'd protected from the chaos that had defined his own childhood. His daughter Molly had just turned 5, all wild auburn curls and fierce blue eyes that seemed to see more than a child should. His son, Thomas, was 3 weeks old, still red-faced and wrinkled, sleeping in the handcrafted oak crib Weston had spent 2 months building. But tonight, something was wrong. "Molly, sweetheart, it's past 9, Weston said, standing in the nursery doorway. His daughter stood beside the crib, one small hand resting on the railing, her eyes fixed on her baby brother. She'd been there for over an hour. She shook her head silently, not looking away from Thomas. Weston crossed the room, his footsteps soft on the thick carpet. He designed this nursery as a sanctuary, pale blue walls, blackout curtains, a white noise machine humming softly in the corner. Everything meant to create peace. But there was no peace in his daughter's rigid posture. "What's wrong, Mole?" He crouched beside her, keeping his voice gentle. "Is Tommy okay?" "I need to watch him," she whispered. "Why, baby?" Her small jaw clenched, an expression he recognized from his own mirror. "Just do." Weston had learned not to dismiss his daughter's instincts. She'd inherited his analytical mind, his ability to notice patterns others missed. When she was 3, she'd refused to go to a neighbor's house for a play date, crying inconsolably. 2 weeks later, that neighbor was arrested for possession of child pornography. Claire had called it coincidence. Weston knew better. "Okay," he said, surprising her. "But you need to tell me what you're worried about." Molly's lower lip trembled. "I heard the bad people." Ice flooded Weston's veins. "What bad people?" "The ones who want to take Tommy away." Weston stayed with Molly until she finally fell asleep in the rocking chair, her hands still extended toward the crib. He carried her to her room, tucked her in, then returned to the nursery. His wife, Claire, was already asleep, exhausted from night feedings and a brutal recovery from an emergency C-section. He stood where Molly had stood, looking down at his son. Thomas's tiny chest rose and fell with perfect rhythm. His son, his blood. The paternity test he'd insisted on, over Claire's hurt protests, had confirmed it with 99.9% certainty. But someone wanted to take him. Weston's phone buzzed. A text from his business partner, Ken Alexander. "Need you to look at the Morrison Project revisions." Clients being difficult. He ignored it. For the first time in his career, work could wait. At 2 a.m., Weston returned to check on Thomas. What he found made his blood run cold. Molly was standing beside the crib again, perfectly still in the darkness. But she wasn't alone. In the dim glow of the nightlight, he could see what had terrified her into silence. The window was open. 6 inches. Just enough. He'd locked it himself before bed. The window was 12 feet off the ground. No trellis, no easy access, unless someone knew what they were doing. Unless someone had planned this. Weston moved with the careful silence of a man who'd grown up in a house where noise meant danger. He closed the window, locked it, then gently lifted Molly. She didn't wake, but her small body remained tense even in sleep. After putting her to bed again, he returned to the nursery and examined the window frame. Fresh scratches on the exterior lock. Someone had tried to jimmy it open from outside, stopped only by the security bar he'd installed as backup, a feature Claire had called paranoid. Paranoia, Weston had learned early, was just preparation without the luxury of proof. He spent the rest of the night reviewing the security camera footage from the 4 cameras he'd installed around the property. Nothing obvious. But at 9:47 p.m., a shadow moved past the side yard camera, gone before the motion sensor fully activated. Too deliberate to be coincidence. Too practiced to be amateur. At 6 a.m., Claire found him at the kitchen table, surrounded by laptop screens and empty coffee cups. "Wes, did you sleep at all?" She looked exhausted, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, dark circles under her green eyes. 33 and still beautiful, but the pregnancy had been hard on her. The birth harder. "Molly's been worried about Tommy," he said carefully, standing guard by his crib. Any idea why? Something flickered across Claire's face. Fear? Guilt? It vanished too quickly for him to identify. She's probably just adjusting. New baby, less attention. She said she heard bad people want to take Tommy away. Claire's coffee cup stopped halfway to her lips. Kids have vivid imaginations. Someone tried to open the nursery window last night. The cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the tile floor. Coffee splashed across the white cabinets Weston had designed to maximize morning light. Claire stared at the mess, her face paper white. "Claire," Weston said quietly. "What's going on? I can't." Her voice cracked. "Weston, I need to tell you something." Chapter 2. The Architect's Blueprint. Claire's confession came in fragments, like a building collapsing in slow motion. She'd had an affair. 2 years ago, during the 6 months Weston had spent in Tokyo, overseeing the construction of his first international project, the sustainable housing complex that had won him the Architectural Digest Innovation Award and enough debt to drown in. He'd been gone 18 hours a day, sleeping in shipping containers on site, video calling home when he could, trying to build a future while his marriage crumbled in his absence. The man's name was Desmond McCann. "I met him at the gallery opening," Claire said, not meeting Weston's eyes. They sat in his home office, the door locked, Molly's cartoons playing loudly in the living room to mask their conversation. He was charming, attentive, everything you weren't at the time. Weston said nothing. His mind was already working, processing, building a structure from these broken pieces. It lasted 4 months. Then you came home early, remember? For Molly's birthday. And I realized what I was risking. I ended it. Blocked his number. I swear, Weston, I haven't talked to him since. Until she flinched. He started calling again. 2 months ago. Said he needed to see me. That it was important. I refused. 2 months ago. Right when Claire had gotten pregnant. When the paternity test had been done. What did he want? I don't know. I never answered. But the calls kept coming. Different numbers. Then they stopped about a month ago, and I thought, I hoped. You hope what, Claire? She finally looked at him, tears streaming down her face. That he'd moved on. That I wouldn't have to tell you about him. That we could just move forward. Weston stood and walked to the window. His office overlooked the city, the downtown skyline he'd helped reshape with 3 major commercial projects. From here, Portland looked orderly, planned, controllable. He knew better. Every building had stress points. Every structure had weaknesses. Every design had flaws, including his marriage. I need everything, he said. Every detail about Desmond McCann. Where you met. Where he lived. What he did for work. Everything you remember. Wes, I'm so sorry. Everything, Claire. Now, Desmond McCann was a ghost. Weston spent the next 3 days compiling information while maintaining his normal routine. Client meetings, design reviews, family dinners where he and Claire moved around each other like strangers. She slept in the guest room. He didn't object. Molly continued her vigil, and Weston let her. He set up a sleeping bag beside the crib, told her she was Tommy's special protector. She took the job seriously, sleeping in 3-hour shifts, waking alert at any sound. His 5-year-old daughter understood threat assessment better than most adults. What Weston found about Desmond McCann painted an incomplete picture, which was itself a red flag. The man had minimal social media presence, no permanent address in Portland, and a work history that consisted of vague, consulting positions that disappeared when scrutinized. He'd met Claire at a gallery opening for local artists, but the gallery had closed 6 months later, its owner relocating to Vancouver without forwarding information. Professional ghost, either deep in debt and hiding, or deep in crime and careful. Weston was betting on the latter. The breakthrough came from an unlikely source. Ken Alexander, his business partner, had mentioned over lunch that a potential client had asked strange questions about Weston's family during a consultation. Questions about children, ages, home security. The client had provided the name Des McCoy and never showed up with a scheduled follow-up. Des McCoy, Desmond McCann, close enough to be alias, different enough to avoid easy connection. Did you get a picture? Weston asked. Kent nodded, pulling up his phone. Security cam at the office entrance. I kept it because something fell off. The man on screen was late 30s, dark hair, expensive suit, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Handsome in a calculated way. The kind of man who made women like Claire feel seen and special while men like Weston recognized as predator. "I need you to do something for me," Weston said. And you can't ask why. Ken had known Weston since college, had been best man at his wedding, was godfather to Molly. "Whatever you need." Chapter 3. The Pattern. The second attempt came on night 7. Weston had upgraded his security, additional cameras, window sensors, motion-activated lights. He'd also done something Claire didn't know about. He'd installed a hidden camera in the nursery itself, angled to capture both the crib and the window. At 3:17 a.m., Molly's scream woke the house. Weston reached the nursery in seconds, but Molly was already there, standing between the crib and a figure in dark clothes who'd somehow gotten the window open despite the new locks. The intruder froze when the lights blazed on, caught between escape and his objective. But it wasn't Desmond McCann. It was a woman, 30s, athletic build, blonde hair tied back, surgical gloves on her hands. She held a syringe filled with clear liquid. "Step away from the crib," Weston said, his voice deadly calm. His phone was already recording from his pocket, back up to the cameras he knew were capturing everything. The woman looked at him, at Molly, at the baby. Then she dropped the syringe and dove for the window. Weston could have stopped her, chose not to, let her scramble out and disappear into the night while he held his screaming daughter and checked his son, who'd slept through the entire thing with the oblivious peace of infancy. Claire appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" "Weston, what?" "Call the police," he said. "Tell them we had an intruder. Tell them nothing else." "But—" "Nothing else, Claire." He picked up the syringe with a tissue, careful not to touch it directly. The liquid inside was unmarked, but he'd have it analyzed. He already suspected what it was, something to sedate Thomas, make him easy to transport. Or maybe something worse, something permanent. Because that was the pattern he'd seen emerge over the past week of research, the pattern that had made his blood run cold when the pieces finally connected. Desmond McCann had a sister, Angeline McLaughlin, former nurse, license revoked 3 years ago for irregularities in patient care, a polite way of saying she'd been stealing prescription medications. No arrest, just quiet dismissal and a sealed file that Weston had paid a private investigator $5,000 to unseal. But it went deeper than that. Angeline and Desmond weren't just siblings. They were partners in something darker. The PI had found a pattern. Wealthy women, short-term affairs, pregnancies, and then complications. Miscarriages, stillbirths, SIDS cases. Nothing provable, everything coincidental, but too many coincidences in too narrow a pattern. And now they wanted Thomas. The question was why. Thomas was tested, confirmed as Weston's biological son, unless Desmond somehow believed otherwise. Unless Claire had told him something during their affair. Unless this was about something else entirely. Revenge, money, obsession. Weston watched the police take statements, photograph the scene, collect the syringe. He watched Claire cry and explain and omit. He watched Molly refuse to leave his side, her small hand gripping his shirt like a lifeline. And he made a decision. The authorities would do their job. They'd investigate, file reports, maybe even identify Angeline from the camera footage. They'd increase patrols, issue warnings, follow procedures. But procedures had loopholes. Investigations took time. Trials took longer. And sometimes, predators slipped through cracks in the system. Weston Page wasn't going to let that happen. He'd spent his career designing structures that withstood earthquakes, floods, and fire. Buildings that protected people from natural disasters and human threats. Now he designed something different. A trap. A perfect, inescapable trap that would use Desmond and Angeline's own plans against them. That would expose them completely and ensure they never threatened another child again. He just needed to build it carefully, piece by piece, with the same precision he applied to his best work. And the first piece was already in place. They thought they'd fail tonight. They thought Weston was scared, defensive, protecting. They had no idea he was planning. Chapter 4. The Blueprint of Evil. Weston's private investigator, a former federal agent named Reuben Liu who specialized in delicate matters, delivered his full report 3 days after the break-in. They met at a coffee shop in southeast Portland, far from Weston's office and neighborhood. Reuben looked like someone's grandfather. Salt and pepper hair, warm smile, cardigan sweater, which made people underestimate how dangerous he could be. "You're not going to like this," Reuben said, sliding a thick folder across the table. "But you need to know what you're dealing with." The folder contained the history of Desmond McCann and Angeline McLaughlin, and it was worse than Weston had imagined. They'd grown up in Bend, Oregon, the children of a nurse mother and absent father. Their mother, according to sealed court records Reuben had somehow accessed, had been involved in an illegal adoption ring in the 1990s, matching unwanted babies with desperate couples who couldn't navigate legal channels. She died in prison when Desmond was 15 and Angeline was 17. The siblings had inherited her business model, but refined it. "They target women in vulnerable positions," Reuben explained, keeping his voice low. "Recent affairs, unhappy marriages, financial stress. Desmond seduces them. If they get pregnant, perfect. If not, Angeline has methods. Medical background, remember? Methods. Hormone treatments disguised as supplements. Fertility drugs. Ways to ensure pregnancy happens. Then they wait. If the woman stays with her husband, they approach her with a proposition. Give up the baby to a better home. Get paid. Everyone wins. If she refuses," Reuben's expression darkened. "That's when the accidents start." The folder documented 5 cases over the past 8 years. 5 pregnancies connected to Desmond's affairs. 3 resulted in babies who disappeared into private adoptions. Legal on paper, but the money trail suggested something darker. 2 resulted in deaths. 1 listed as SIDS. 1 is a tragic accident when the baby fell from a changing table. "They sell them," Weston said flatly. "They're selling babies to the highest bidder. Can't prove it. But yeah, that's my read. They've gotten smarter over the years. More careful. This is the first time they've tried a direct snatch that I can document. Either they're getting desperate or what? Or your son is special somehow. Worth the risk." Weston's mind raced through possibilities. Thomas was healthy, blood type O positive, no genetic abnormalities. Unless the paternity test. Could they have manipulated it somehow? Possible, but unlikely with the lab you used. More likely they convinced themselves Thomas is Desmond's biological child, maybe through timing or Claire's statements during the affair. That would make him family in their twisted logic. Valuable. And if I refused to give him up? Reuben didn't answer directly. Instead, he pulled out another photo. A woman in her mid-30s, pretty, sad-eyed. Rebecca Marsh. She had an affair with Desmond 4 years ago. Got pregnant. Refused his generous offer to place the baby. 3 months after her daughter was born, the house caught fire. Electrical malfunction, investigation said. Rebecca and the baby died. Her husband survived, but suffered severe burns and psychological trauma. He's in a long-term care facility now. The message was clear. Refuse, and your whole family dies. There's more, Reuben continued. Angeline has been using multiple identities. She's worked as a nanny, a home health aide, a pediatric nurse under the table. She gets close to families, assesses the situation, makes recommendations to Desmond. She's likely been watching your family for months. Weston thought about the new nanny Claire had hired briefly when Thomas was born, the one who'd quit after 2 days, claiming bad vibes from the house. The home health aide who'd visited when Claire had a postpartum infection, asking too many questions about the baby. The friendly woman at the pediatrician's office who'd made conversation in the waiting room. They've been planning this since before Thomas was born, he realized. Probably since before he was conceived, Reuben agreed. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Weston spent the next week becoming someone he'd never been before, a man willing to cross lines he'd previously considered sacred. He couldn't go to the police with what Reuben had found. Half of it was obtained through illegal means, hacked emails, surveillance without warrants, bribed courthouse clerks. It would never hold up in court, and it would warn Desmond and Angeline that he knew their history. No, this required a different approach. Weston had always believed in systems, in rules, in the law. His childhood had taught him that chaos was the enemy, that structure protected people. But structure had weaknesses, and predators knew how to exploit them. So he'd build a new structure, one designed specifically to trap these particular predators. He started with money. Desmond and Angeline were motivated by profit, so Weston would offer them profit. But it would be bait, and once they took it, the trap would spring. Through an intermediary, a lawyer friend who owed him a favor and didn't ask questions, Weston let it be known that he was considering a private adoption for Thomas. That the birth had been difficult, his marriage was struggling, and he was open to unconventional arrangements for the right price. The hook was set. Now he waited for them to bite. Meanwhile, he worked on the secondary elements of his plan. He documented everything. The break-in, the syringe, which testing confirmed contained midazolam, a powerful sedative, Claire's affair and Desmond's subsequent harassment, the strange visitors and calls. He created a detailed timeline, backed up with security footage, phone records, and witness statements. He also did something Claire didn't know about. He filed for divorce. Not openly. That would alert Desmond and Angeline that the marriage was ending, which might make them desperate. Instead, he had the papers drawn up, ready to file the moment his trap was complete. Claire had betrayed him, endangered their children. He couldn't forgive that, but he could use her guilt and fear to his advantage. "I need you to do something for me," he told Claire one night after Molly was asleep. They sat in the living room, the space between them on the couch feeling like an ocean. "When Desmond contacts you, and he will, I need you to seem receptive, like you're considering his offer." "What offer?" "Weston, I don't understand." "They want Thomas. They're going to offer you money, a new life, freedom from a failing marriage. They're going to make it sound reasonable, even noble, and you're going to act like you're considering it." Claire's face went white. "I would never." "I know, but they don't. You're going to be my inside source, Claire. You're going to find out exactly what they're planning, and then I'm going to destroy them." "This is insane. We should just go to the police." "The police will investigate, arrest, and maybe convict if we're lucky. But their operation will continue under new names in a new city. More babies will disappear. More mothers will grieve. This ends now, and it ends completely." He saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else, determination. Whatever Claire was, unfaithful, weak, foolish, she loved her children. That was the one thing Weston never doubted. "What do you need me to do?" Chapter 5. The Inside Game. The call came 2 weeks later, from a number Claire didn't recognize. She answered on speaker, Weston beside her, recording device running. "Claire, it's me." Desmond's voice was smooth, concerned. The voice of a man who cared. "I heard about the break-in. Are you okay? Is the baby safe?" "We're fine," Claire said, her voice trembling exactly right. "But Weston's being paranoid. Extra security, cameras everywhere. I can barely breathe. That must be so hard. I worry about you." "Do you?" The bitterness in her voice was real. "You disappeared for 2 years, Desmond. No calls, no messages. Then suddenly you need to see me? Need something." A pause. When he spoke again, the smoothness was gone, replaced by something rawer. "I made a mistake, letting you go. But when you got pregnant, I hoped. Thomas isn't yours." The lie came easily now. She'd practiced it with Weston. "The timing doesn't work out, doesn't it?" "Think carefully, Claire." Late April, that weekend Weston was in Seattle for the convention. "We were together. And then he came home early. You ended things, but the baby..." Weston did a paternity test. Tests can be wrong. Or manipulated. "Claire, I think Thomas is my son. And I think you know it too." The audacity of the lie was breathtaking. Weston saw Claire's hand clench, her prepared responses temporarily forgotten in the face of such blatant manipulation. He squeezed her other hand, bringing her back. "Even if he was," she said slowly, "what does it matter now? I'm married. Thomas has a father. Does he? Or does he have a man who works 80 hours a week and barely knows his own children? Claire, I can offer you something better. A fresh start. Financial security. Freedom. Ow! There are families who would give anything for a child. Good families with resources, love, stability. They pay well for a healthy baby boy, no questions asked. You'd never have to worry about money again. And we could be together like we should have been." There it was. The offer laid bare. Sell Thomas and run away together, living on blood money. Claire's voice when she responded was perfect, hesitant, tempted, scared. I don't know, Des. That's crazy. Is it? Or is it the sanest thing you've ever considered? Think about it. I'll call again in a few days. But Claire, his voice dropped, became harder. Don't take too long to decide. Windows of opportunity close. And accidents happen to people who don't recognize their chances. The line went dead. Claire immediately burst into tears, real ones this time. Oh God, Weston. He just threatened us. He threatened our whole family. I know. Weston saved the recording, backed it up to 3 separate encrypted drives. Which means he's getting desperate. Good. Good? How is any of this good? Because desperate people make mistakes. And I'm going to make sure they make every single mistake possible. The next phase of Weston's plan required help from someone with less ethical constraints. He found that person in an unexpected place, his contractor, Miguel Romero. Miguel had worked on 5 of Weston's residential projects, a master craftsman who could make wood and stone sing. He was also, Weston had learned through careful observation, a man with a complicated past involving cartel connections in Guadalajara and a very good reason to stay on the right side of U.S. law enforcement. They met at a construction site for one of Weston's current projects, a sustainable eco-house in the hills that was 3 weeks from completion. The shell was up, the bones of something beautiful. I need to build something, Weston said without preamble. Not a house, a scenario. And I need someone who understands how to make things look one way while being another. Miguel was quiet for a long moment, studying the framing around them. This about your family? The trouble I heard about? Yes. People wanting to hurt your kid? To steal him? Or worse? Miguel nodded slowly. My sister. She had a baby taken 10 years ago in Guadalajara. Sold to Americans. We never found her. He turned to face Weston. What do you need? Weston laid out his plan. It was risky, probably illegal in a dozen ways, and required perfect timing. It also required Miguel's skills in creating false walls, hidden compartments, and rooms that appeared one way in blueprints but functioned entirely differently in reality. You're building a trap, Miguel said when Weston finished. Using your own house as bait. Not my house. A rental property I'm designing for a client. Or at least, that's what the permits say. Weston pulled up architectural drawings on his tablet. A small house in a rural area outside Portland, isolated but not suspiciously so. The client is fictional. The property is real. And when Desmond and Angeline take the bait, they'll find themselves in a cage of their own making. And then I'll have everything I need to put them away forever. Or make them wish I had. Miguel studied the drawings, professional, eye-catching details most people would miss. This room here, the basement, you want it reinforced. Soundproof. Yes. And this electrical system, it's designed to be controlled remotely, including locks, lights, everything. Yes. Mr. Page, this isn't just a trap. This is a confession room. You're going to lock them in and make them talk. Weston met his eyes. I'm going to make them confess everything they've ever done. Every baby they've stolen or killed. Every family they've destroyed. And I'm going to record every word. That's dangerous. For you, I mean, legally. I know. Miguel was quiet for another moment, then nodded. I'll do it. For my niece. And for your son. But Mr. Page, when this is over, we never speak of it. This project doesn't exist in my books or yours. Agreed. They shook hands, sealing an agreement that would either save Weston's family or destroy everything he'd built. Chapter 6. The Sweet Trap. It took 3 weeks to prepare the trap house. Miguel worked with his most trusted crew, men who'd learned not to ask questions and to forget what they saw. The house rose on a 5-acre property Weston had purchased through a shell company, isolated enough for privacy, but not so remote it seemed suspicious. From the outside, it looked like any other modern farmhouse. Clean lines, large windows, sustainable materials. Exactly the kind of property a successful architect might design for a client interested in rural living. From the inside, it was something else entirely. The basement had been reinforced with steel-lined walls, soundproofing, and a ventilation system that could be controlled remotely. The doors had electronic locks that could be triggered from Weston's phone. Cameras were hidden in smoke detectors, air vents, and light fixtures, all streaming to encrypted servers. The entire electrical system could be shut down with a single command, trapping anyone inside in darkness. But the genius of the design was in its subtlety. Nothing looked obviously wrong. The basement appeared to be a simple storage area with a workshop. The reinforced walls were hidden behind normal drywall. The cameras were invisible to casual inspection. It was a perfect cage disguised as a perfect home. While the house was being built, Weston continued his performance with Claire. She'd spoken to Desmond twice more, each time seeming more conflicted, more vulnerable to his manipulation. The recordings captured him becoming bolder, more explicit about his plans. "We have a buyer," he'd said in the latest call. "A couple in San Francisco, very wealthy, very discreet. They're offering $500,000 for a healthy infant. No questions asked. That's your share, Claire. $500,000 to start over. And you take the other half. Angeline and I have expenses. But yes, we'd split it. Family business." The casual way he said it, family business, made Weston want to reach through the phone and snap his neck. But that wasn't the plan. The plan required patience. "I need to see you," Claire said, her voice small. "To talk about this properly. Not over the phone. That's smart. Phones aren't secure. I know a place. Quiet, private. We can discuss everything. Not a public place. Too risky. What if Weston follows me? Where then?" "There's a property. A rental house Weston's designing. It's empty right now, still being finished. He's been working there constantly. I have the access codes." The lie was smooth, practiced. "We could meet there. No one would know." A pause. Weston could almost hear Desmond's mind working, weighing risks and opportunities. Meeting at a property owned by Weston seemed dangerous, but it also seemed legitimate. A wife sneaking away to a place her husband controlled, using his own resources against him. The betrayal would appeal to Desmond's ego. When? Next Tuesday evening. Weston has a client dinner in the city. I'll tell him I'm staying home with the kids. But I'll meet you instead. And you'll bring Thomas? Claire's breath caught. Real fear, real mother's instinct. Why would I? So the buyer can see him. Verify he's healthy. Claire, this is a business transaction. They need to see the product. I can't just take my baby. You can. You will. If you want this to work. Bring Thomas. We'll have our conversation, show him to the buyer's representative, and then you go home. Nothing changes until you're ready to commit. Think of it as a trial run. Weston shook his head violently. No way in hell was he letting Thomas anywhere near these monsters. But Claire understood. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll bring him. Good girl. Text me the address. I'll see you Tuesday." After he hung up, Claire collapsed against Weston, sobbing. "I can't do this. I can't pretend to give them our baby. You won't have to." Weston held her, feeling nothing but cold calculation. "Thomas won't be there. We'll use a doll, wrapped in blankets. In dim lighting, it'll pass long enough. By the time they realize, it'll be too late." Too late for what? Too late for them to leave. Tuesday arrived clear and cold, autumn bleeding into winter. Weston went through his day with mechanical precision. Morning meeting with Kent about the Morrison project, lunch with a new client, afternoon reviewing plans for a sustainable housing development in Beaverton. Normal. Routine. Nothing to suggest tonight would change everything. At home, he kissed Molly goodbye. "Grandma's coming to stay with you and Tommy tonight. Daddy has to work late." "Are you going to stop the bad people?" she asked, her blue eyes too knowing for a 5-year-old. "Yes, baby. I am." "Good. They're very bad." "The worst," he agreed. His mother-in-law, Eleanor Glover, arrived at 6. She didn't know the full situation, just that there had been threats, that police were investigating, and that Weston wanted extra security for the kids while he worked late. She was a good woman, practical and unflappable, and she loved her grandchildren fiercely. "We'll be fine," she assured him. "You have that big client dinner. Don't worry about us." The client dinner was real. Kent was actually attending it, prepared to cover for Weston if anyone asked questions. But Weston would be elsewhere, at the trap house, making final preparations. He arrived at 7. Miguel had already done a last walkthrough, confirmed everything worked perfectly, and disappeared. "Remember," he'd said before leaving, "I was never here. This place doesn't exist." Weston checked every camera, every lock, every system. Then he settled into the small room he'd built off the garage. Observation posts with monitors showing every angle of the house. He'd spent $50,000 on this setup, worth every penny if it worked. At 7:45, Claire texted, "On my way." He's following. At 8:10, headlights appeared on the long driveway. Claire's SUV, arriving exactly on schedule. She parked near the front door, got out carrying a bundle of blankets. From a distance, it looked exactly like a mother with an infant. She went inside using the code Weston had given her, turning on lights as she moved through the house. To anyone watching, it would seem like she was nervous, checking the empty rooms, waiting. At 8:25, a second vehicle arrived. A black sedan, expensive but not flashy. It parked next to Claire's SUV. Two people got out. Weston zoomed the camera in, confirming their identities. Desmond McCann and Angeline McLaughlin. The trap had caught its prey. Now came the hard part, making sure they never escaped. Chapter 7. Walls closing in. Weston watched through the cameras as Desmond and Angeline enter the house. They moved with the confidence of predators entering familiar territory. No hesitation, no second guessing. Desmond wore an expensive suit, his dark hair perfectly styled. Angeline was more practical in dark jeans and a leather jacket, her blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun. They found Claire in the living room, standing near the fireplace with a bundle of blankets. "You came," she said, her voice shaking just right. "Of course." Desmond crossed to her, reaching for the blankets. "Let me see him." Claire pulled back. "Not yet. We need to talk first. You said this was just a meeting, just to discuss options." "It is," Angeline said, her voice smoother than her brother's. Nurse's voice, calm and reassuring. "We're all adults here, Claire. We're all on the same side. Are we? Because it feels like you're pressuring me to sell my baby." "Not sell," Desmond corrected. "Place. With a family who can give him everything. More than a struggling architect and his unfaithful wife can provide." The insult was deliberate, testing Claire's reaction. She flinched, exactly as expected. "Weston doesn't know about this meeting." "We know," Angeline said. "That's smart. The less he knows, the easier this will be for everyone." From his observation post, Weston activated the first phase. All the exterior lights shut off, plunging the property into darkness. Inside the house, the lights flickered once, just enough to make everyone look up. "Power grid out here is unstable," Claire said quickly. Weston mentioned it. "Sometimes the lights." They flickered again, then stabilized. Desmond frowned, but didn't comment. "The buyer's representative will be here soon," he said. "Just a quick verification, then we can discuss next steps. Nothing's final until you say so." "Where is this buyer?" "San Francisco, you said." "That's right. Tech money. They've been trying for years, can't have children naturally. They're willing to pay premium for the right baby." "How many babies have you done this with?" Claire asked, genuine curiosity mixed with horror. Angeline smiled. "Does it matter? Those children are with loving families now. Families that wanted them, could afford them, would give them opportunities their birth parents never could. We're facilitators, Claire. We help create happy families. By stealing babies, by recognizing opportunities," Desmond corrected. "Women get pregnant all the time in circumstances they can't handle. Affairs, bad timing, financial stress. We offer them a solution. Everyone wins. Except the babies who get snatched from their cribs in the middle of the night." The temperature in the room dropped. Desmond's charming mask slipped, showing something colder beneath. "That was unfortunate." Angeline got overzealous. "We prefer willing mothers. But when they become uncooperative, sometimes direct action is necessary." "Direct action," Claire repeated. "Is that what you call the family that died in the fire? Rebecca Marsh and her baby?" Angeline's eyes went sharp. "How do you know that name?" "Weston's been investigating you. He knows everything. The affairs, the adoptions, the accidents. He knows what you are." Desmond's hand shot out, grabbing Claire's arm. "Then why the hell are you here?" "Because he asked me to be." Claire pulled away, and the bundle of blankets fell to the floor, revealing not an infant, but a doll wrapped in Thomas's baby clothes. Desmond stared at the doll, then at Claire, understanding dawning in his eyes. This is a trap. Yes, Weston said, his voice coming from hidden speakers throughout the house. It is. All the doors slammed shut simultaneously, electronic locks engaging with heavy clicks. The windows, reinforced and sealed, became impenetrable. The lights dropped to emergency mode, just enough to see by, not enough to hide. Desmond ran for the front door, yanked the handle. Locked. He pulled out his phone. No signal. Weston had installed signal jammers in the walls. "Let us out," Angeline shouted at the ceiling. "This is illegal. False imprisonment." "So is attempted kidnapping," Weston replied. "And murder. And selling babies to the highest bidder. We're going to have a conversation about all of that. You can't keep us here. I can't actually. This house is on 5 acres of private property. No neighbors within a half-mile. Soundproof walls. Nobody knows you're here except me and Claire." And Claire, the locks on the front door clicked open, is leaving now. Claire ran for the door without looking back. She'd done her part, played her role. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't witness. The door locked again behind her, leaving Desmond and Angeline trapped with Weston's voice and the weight of their crimes. "Here's how this works," Weston continued. "I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to answer truthfully. Every lie, every evasion makes this take longer. But eventually, you'll tell me everything. Every baby you've stolen, every family you've destroyed, every crime you've committed. And I'm going to record it all." "And then what?" Desmond demanded. "You turn us over to the police? With evidence obtained through kidnapping and coercion? It'll never stand up in court." Who said anything about court? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. "You're insane," Angeline said. "You're an architect, a family man. You're not a killer." "No," Weston agreed. "I'm not. But I am a father protecting his son. And I am someone who's done the math on how many children you've hurt, how many families you've destroyed, and how the legal system has failed to stop you. So we're going to try something different." "What?" "Justice." Chapter 8, The Breaking Point. Hour 1 was denial and defiance. Desmond and Angeline tried everything, threatening legal action, claiming innocence, accusing Weston of being the real criminal. They searched for exits that didn't exist, weaknesses in walls that had been designed without them. Angeline even tried to pick the electronic locks with a bobby pin until Weston remotely electrified the door handles with enough current to sting, but not harm. "You're wasting time," he told them. "And battery life. Once the backup generator runs out, we'll be in the dark." Much harder to have a conversation then. Hour 2 was bargaining. "What do you want?" Desmond asked finally, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. "Money? We have money. Lots of it. 500,000 liquid. More if you give us time. I don't want your money." "Then what? What could possibly be worth this?" "The truth. All of it. Every baby, every family, every crime. Everything. And if we tell you, you let us go, I'll consider it. That's not good enough. It's the only offer you're getting." Angeline tried a different approach. "We can disappear. Leave the country. You'd never have to worry about us again. Your family would be safe. Until you set up shop in Mexico or Thailand or wherever you run to. Until you find new vulnerable women and new babies to steal. No, this ends here. You self-righteous bastard," she spat. "You think you're better than us? Your wife was fucking my brother while you were off building your precious buildings. You're not the victim here. You're just a fool who couldn't keep his woman satisfied." "That's true," Weston agreed calmly. "I failed my marriage. I was absent when Claire needed me. I'll live with that. But the difference is I never hurt children. I never destroyed families. I never killed innocent people who got in my way." "We never killed anyone," Desmond said quickly. Too quickly. "Rebecca Marsh and her baby. The house fire. That was an accident. Was it? Or did Angeline use her nursing skills to make it look like faulty wiring when she actually poured accelerant through the basement window? The same basement window that had been jimmied open, according to the fire investigators' report. Silence. "I have copies of everything," Weston continued. "Fire reports, insurance claims, witness statements. Shall we go through them one by one? Or would you like to skip ahead and tell me the truth?" Hour 3 was when the cracks started showing. Angeline began pacing, her professional calm fracturing. This isn't right. We help people. Those children have good lives now. Better lives. Did you ask them? Weston zoomed one camera in on her face, capturing every detail. Did you ask Rebecca Marsh's daughter if she wanted to burn to death? Did you ask the parents of the children you stole if they wanted to spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to their babies? They were bad parents. According to who? You? Desmond? What gives you the right to decide? Someone has to. The system's broken. Children born to addicts, to poor families, to situations that will only hurt them. We gave them better chances. By selling them like livestock. By placing them with families who could afford to care for them properly. And if the mothers refused, if they wanted to keep their babies despite your judgment, Angeline's face twisted. Then they were fools. And fools suffer. There it was. The admission Weston needed. He saved the recording, backed it up, kept going. Tell me about the SIDS case. Portland, 2 years ago. Baby boy, 3 months old. Desmond's head snapped up. How do you? I know everything. I told you that. The question is whether you'll confirm it or make this harder than it needs to be. It was an accident, Angeline said, but her voice wavered. What happened? The mother was using pills, alcohol. The baby was at risk. We offered to help. She refused. She stopped. You what? I gave him something to help him sleep. Just a little. But he was so small, and his system couldn't handle it. It wasn't murder. It was a miscalculation. Weston felt his hands clench into fists. A miscalculation. An infant's life ended by a miscalculation, and she spoke of it like a failed recipe. And the others? How many others? Hour 4 was when they broke completely. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the weight of their crimes finally crushing them. Maybe it was the realization that Weston wasn't going to let them go, wasn't going to stop until he had everything. Whatever the reason, they talked. 5 babies placed through illegal adoptions over the past 6 years. 2 deaths, the SIDS case and Rebecca Marsh's daughter. 3 families terrorized into silence when they started asking questions. Payments totaling over $2 million from desperate couples who didn't ask too many questions about where the babies came from. And a plan for Thomas. We thought he was mine, Desmond said, his voice hollow. The timing worked. Claire got pregnant right after we. And if he was my son, then he was family. Not stealing, just reclaiming what was mine. Even though the paternity test said otherwise. Tests can be wrong. Or manipulated. We hoped. You hoped you could steal my son and sell him for $500,000. Yes. The admission hung in the air like poison gas. And if I'd refused? If Claire had refused? Angeline met his eyes through the camera, no remorse in her expression. Then you would have had an accident. The whole family. House fire, maybe. Or carbon monoxide. Quick, painless. We would have made sure the children didn't suffer. How generous. It would have been business. Nothing personal. It's always personal, Weston said, when you're killing children. He had what he needed. Hours of footage, clear admissions, details that could be corroborated by investigation. Enough to put them away for life, if he chose to turn it over to authorities. But he never planned to do that. Here's what happens next, he told them. You're going to write confessions. Everything you told me, in your own words, signed and dated. You're going to include names, dates, details. You're going to make it impossible for prosecutors to ignore or dismiss. And then what? Desmond asked. Then you're going to disappear. Chapter 9. The foundation that holds. They wrote the confessions in the basement, at the table Weston had set up specifically for this purpose. For hours of writing, every detail captured by cameras from multiple angles. Desmond's handwriting was precise, Angeline's more hurried, but both documents were thorough. When they finished, Weston had them read their confessions aloud on camera, confirming every word. Now what? Angeline asked. She looked exhausted, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. You're going to kill us and dump our bodies somewhere. No, I told you, I'm not a killer. Then what's the point of all this? The point is that you're finished. Done. Your operation ends tonight. He unlocked the basement door remotely. Upstairs. Living room. They climbed the stairs like prisoners ascending to the gallows. In the living room, Weston had left 2 envelopes on the mantel. Open them. Desmond opened his envelope first. Inside was a plane ticket to Mexico City, $10,000 in cash, and a new identity, passport, driver's license, credit cards, all under the name David Morton. Angeline's envelope was similar. Plane ticket to Toronto, money, new identity as Andrea Mills. You're leaving the country, Weston said. Tonight. Separately. You don't contact each other, don't come back to the U.S., don't continue your business anywhere. You disappear. Or I release the videos and confessions to every law enforcement agency, every news outlet, every victims' rights group in North America. You'll be the most wanted criminals on the continent. And I'll make sure everyone knows what you did to children. We could run anyway, Desmond said. Take your money and tickets, and then keep doing what we do. You can't watch us forever. True, but I've taken insurance. Weston pulled up a screen on his tablet, showed them the interface. This is a dead man's switch. If I don't log in every 72 hours, everything I've collected, videos, confessions, evidence, automatically releases to a list of recipients. FBI, state police, newspapers, TV stations. Everyone. And if anything happens to me or my family, same thing. You can't touch us without destroying yourselves. You're bluffing. Try me. They stare at each other through the screen. Predator and protector, criminal and father. After a long moment, Desmond looked away. This is it, Angeline asked. We just leave? Start over? After everything you've done, you get to live. That's more mercy than you deserve. More than you showed your victims. But killing you would make me like you, and I won't do that. This way, you spend the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders, wondering if today's the day I change my mind and release everything. That's your punishment. That's not justice. No, Weston agreed. But it's what you get. Take it or leave it. They took it. At 4 a.m., Weston watched from his observation post as Desmond and Angeline drove away in separate directions. Him toward the airport, her toward the Canadian border. He'd verified their tickets, confirmed their flights. They'd be out of the country by morning. He'd also done something they didn't know about. Placed tracking devices in their new documents, embedded so deeply they'd never find them without destroying the IDs. For the rest of their lives, he'd know where they were. If they tried to come back, if they tried to restart their operation, he'd know immediately. The dead man's switch was real. The threat was permanent. They were caged by their own crimes, invisible bars but unbreakable. Miguel had been right. This wasn't just a trap. It was a prison that would follow them forever. Weston shut down the systems, wiped the computers, locked the house. By dawn, he'd have the property cleaned and sold. This place would cease to exist in any records, just another real estate transaction in a busy market. He drove home as the sun rose, Portland waking around him in shades of gold and gray. His city, his home, safe again. At the house, his mother-in-law was making breakfast while Molly watched cartoons. Thomas slept in his crib, peaceful and perfect. How was your dinner? Eleanor asked. Productive. Some good developments with a client. Claire appeared in the doorway, her eyes red from crying. She'd spent the night at her mother's apartment, as planned. Away from everything. Weston, she said softly. We need to talk. I know. They went to his office, closed the door. He handed her the divorce papers. I've already signed them. You betrayed our family, endangered our children, and I can't forgive that. You'll have visitation with Molly and Thomas, obviously, and I won't contest a fair settlement. But we're done, Claire. We're done. She took the papers with shaking hands. I understand. I'm so sorry, Weston. For everything. I know. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Are Desmond and Angeline gone? They won't bother us again. That's all you need to know. She nodded, wiping tears. What do I tell people? About the divorce? The truth. We grew apart. I was absent. You had an affair. It happens. That's simple. It is that simple. The complicated part is over. 6 months later, Weston Page stood in his office overlooking Portland, reviewing blueprints for a new project, a women's shelter with specialized facilities for mothers and infants. Pro bono work, his way of balancing scales. Molly had stopped standing guard over her brother's crib after the first week. She'd known, somehow, that the danger had passed. that her father had made them safe. Thomas was 7 months old now, healthy and happy, with his father's blue eyes and his grandmother Eleanor's smile. The DNA test on the office wall confirmed what Weston had always known. Thomas was his son, his blood, his future. Claire had moved to Seattle with a generous settlement and shared custody. She'd started therapy, joined a support group for people recovering from affairs. Maybe she'd heal. Maybe she wouldn't. That was her journey now, not his. Ken stopped by the office, dropping off plans for their latest project. "You seem better," he observed. "More settled." "I am. Good. You went through hell. You deserve some peace." Peace. Weston wasn't sure he'd ever have that completely. The memory of what Desmond and Angeline had done, what they'd planned to do, would never fully fade. And sometimes, late at night, he wondered if he'd made the right choice, letting them live, letting them run, instead of turning them over to face justice. But then he'd check his tracking system and see them still in their exile, still living under the weight of his surveillance. And he'd think about all the children who were safer because predators knew that sometimes victims fought back with intelligence and planning, that sometimes the trap was invisible until it was too late. His phone buzzed. A message from his private investigator, Ruben. "Thought you should know. Couple in Sacramento reported possible adoption fraud. Description matches your friends. Want to follow up?" Weston's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could say yes. Could release everything right now. Could end them completely. Instead, he typed, "Send them a warning. Remind them what happens if they break their agreement." Because that was the genius of his trap. It never really ended. Desmond and Angeline would spend the rest of their lives in prison, just one without bars. Every decision shadowed by fear. Every instinct to hunt and hurt suppressed by the knowledge that one mistake would destroy them. That was justice.